Hello, Adele. Hello, Karen.
Hello.
Welcome. We
Hello.
have Dr. Karen Backy on the show today, and today we're gonna actually have two sessions with you, two podcasts, because we're going to discuss the impacts of trauma and how it's held somatically, so how it's embodied. And so a physical trauma can have an emotional experience, and an emotional experience can have a physical experience. Okay, so today we're going to talk about Adele's experience with some physical trauma that she's had, and and then in the next podcast, we're going to discuss what that did on a biochemical level. So we're going to look at the psychoneuroimmunology aspect of it, which is looking at cell danger response and the metabolomics. But first, I really want to introduce Dr. Karen Backy. So Dr. Karen Backy is a clinical psychologist and a Hakomi trainer. So we are going to weave in the beautiful Hakomi psychotherapy, which is a somatic psychotherapy, and you're also in private practice. And so welcome. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Adele. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Yeah. And I should also say that Karen is actually my therapist as well. So this is quite a unique kind of episode because we're going to go deep into a very personal experience that I had, but we're using it as an example for, people that are listening to this to see what the impact can be of a therapeutic intervention on trauma and actually like how to work with trauma, particularly when it's held in the body.
Yes, absolutely. Your experience was very unique and very cool. And I think it's great that you're willing to share it with people to see what's possible.
Yeah, definitely.
Very brave, being very vulnerable for us this morning.
Yeah, it is. It's a kind of, it's scary to talk about it because it's my very personal experience, but I'm so blown away by how it's worked that it's one of those things that I think it's by going this deep, people can really see how trauma can get stored in the body and what can happen when you actually access it, because it's like magic.
And how it can be healed. That's the great part. And you really can heal really early trauma as well as recent stuff.
Yeah, so where should we begin? I suppose just talking a little bit about, I've been dealing with something for quite a few months. So it sort of started a few months ago. I knew that I was going to have a surgery on, just removing some kind of tumor that was on my foot. It was benign. It was nothing serious. And I didn't really have much anxiety before the surgery. I just thought, no big deal. We just, you go to have a surgery. It's all good. And it was very shortly after the surgery, I actually had a session with you, Karen, and I was in incredible pain, incredible amounts of pain. Can we just talk a little bit about what actually was happening, just sort of looking back, what was going on there, and then what kind of therapeutic intervention you used to sort of access what was going on underneath the surface?
Yeah, I mean, what I recall, Adele, is that, you didn't even tell me you were having a surgery. That's how unimportant it was in your life. I jumped on and, you were on a couch and I was like, oh, and you said you'd had foot surgery and it was, just mentioned it. It was no big deal. And we went on to talk about and process something else. And then I think the next session you were like, oh, it's not great. It's meant, I'm meant to be back to life and activity and personal training, and it's not happening. And you were starting to get frustrated by the pain. And I recall you feeling, somewhat dismissed by the medical people because they were saying, oh, just take some more medication and you'll be okay. And so there was something inside of you saying, this isn't, I think you were torn, like, I'm being told that it's okay, but it doesn't feel like it's okay. And so, we kind of decided, what I suggested to you was knowing that you have previous early surgery in your life, and this was another surgery. What we're often interested in from a psychotherapy point of view is like how I think that the body can't heal, the psyche can't heal unless something is triggered. So the way to get to the earlier stuff, if you like, the trauma that's left and unresolved, is when something similar happens. So I started by suggesting that, I'm thinking, I can't do much for your physical pain. Well, we didn't know at the time, did we, what was going to happen? But I thought, well, at least if we can, perhaps there's an element of I mean this in the best way, like almost an over-exaggeration. Perhaps you're feeling more of this pain, or you're more frightened by this pain because it's tapping into something earlier. So that's my thinking when we started, was I didn't really imagine we could do anything physically for your foot, but I thought if we can do something psychologically for your mental state around being in pain and heal something from the past along the way, well, that would be a bonus, right?
Yeah. And then we went into that session, and it was immediate. Like it was what happens in an Hakomi session. You induce mindfulness, so you're kind of in that kind of space of just being really quiet and just sort of listening to the body and what's kind of going on. And what was right there was this initial surgery, this initial kind of memories of the trauma.
That's right. So by feeling what you were feeling in that moment was this fear of, what if I'll never walk again? What if this is my life? I think you said something like that. Is this my life now? And so that fear was where we started, because it was actually what was available. And so in Hakomi, we start with what's in the present. We start with something that's alive, rather than talking about something that might have happened last week or last year or 10 years ago, but how it's in, and we go in through the body, through the somatics. So the fear was really alive, and and even the way that you said that sounded like, you can feel that there's like a younger part there. And so by inviting you to mindfulness, and you're a fantastic client because you trust the process and you understand what's involved, so you very quickly let that be present. So we just went, and the early surgery was there very, very quickly. You were accessing sort of somatic memories about being in hospital as a very young child.
Yeah. And I think just, for those of you that are listening, just talking a little bit about that early surgery. So I was born with something called congenital hip dysplasia. So it's basically when your hip sockets don't form, and your legs, I was kind of like a little Buddha, like just kind of, all curled up inside. So in that surgery, it was a process of about 6 months where I was in a rack where they pull your femurs down so that you can actually then build, hip sockets and put the femurs back in. But I was in a ward, back then in the late 70s, I was in a ward with, a whole lot of children that are in various states of distress and, screaming and crying and that kind of thing. And I was having this process where every single sort of week they'd be winding this thing to pull it a little bit further. And that was very, I didn't realize as an adult, but accessing this, like realizing how much pain that was, and kind of that actually was a traumatic memory for me, because we were left alone a lot as children. And the visiting hours, didn't allow my mum to come and visit, and my dad was 1,000 kilometers away, and it was just really tricky.
It must have been really unsafe at times, right? Not real, like, am I safe in the world? So you were accessing that part as well, right, Karen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of emotional elements, feeling abandoned, feeling alone, feeling scared, feeling uncertain. So very quickly that whole network of emotions and memory kind of comes to light through that parallel fear of, like, is this going to be my life? Am I going to walk again? For 6 months as a small child, that's an eternity. That is life. That is, and your life was being there. And, as you said, your parents couldn't visit all the, it's not like today where you would have had someone with you 24/7. So those memories came very quickly. And so my memory of that session is that the first part of it was a very sort of standard Hakomi kind of process. In Hakomi, we use mindfulness and the body to access the earlier, we call the child the map maker, the child parts. I mean, obviously there's no real little girl sitting around inside you, but there's this memory, and it's like the child makes the map of your life, of the story. So we're accessing that child part in order to try to make a change. And I don't know if you want to share what happened next, that we kind of went to this, I suggested that we, I think what you said was, that you couldn't cry. There was crying all around, and you could feel that, it was better if you didn't cry. And so you learned to be okay and to not make a noise and to not distress your mum who was distressed by your crying.
And I think I could feel as well, I recall in the session that, those of us that weren't crying would have better treatment from the nurses. So, and no one was explaining what was happening either. There was only this one nurse she sort of clocked that I could understand, and she was sort of explaining to me a few things, but most people were not really explaining what was going on at the time.
Yeah. And so again, I did a fairly standard Hakomi intervention where I suggested that, I could be the safe person for you initially. I suggested that we create a little bubble so that we could block out, the crying and the other things, and that I could be in that safe bubble with you. But your unconscious had a different story. Quite quickly, it decided that it wasn't really about me being in there. And this nurse popped in, right?
Yeah.
This nurse that you could even remember. And then you had a beautiful process with the nurse in the bubble.
Yeah. And she was sort of explaining to me what was happening. And, and I was sort of saying, I don't want that painkiller, I want this painkiller, because that one makes me too fuzzy and this one's better. And, just that she sort of understood that I was understanding everything.
Yeah. So you're quite a cluey little girl, and you had a lot of questions. And in that process of deep immersion and mindfulness and creating the safety of the bubble, we then had the opportunity for what we call in Hakomi a missing experience. So the missing experience is that now somebody is explaining this to me. Now somebody is actually telling me what's going on. Because you were a child, they assumed that you didn't need to know, and they weren't explaining it to you. So in that mindful state, deep in the body, we allowed that. Your unconscious kind of gave it to us. You asked questions of the nurse, she explained things. You asked about which medicine, what to do, and what was it going to do. And she even, you'll imagine, your nurse even said, you're going to study this later. So you kind of were, it brings the adult knowledge that you have, but into a really amazing imaginative space that's co-created with your unconscious to create the experience that you should have had, but you didn't. So it's a corrective experience.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you could elaborate for our audience on, just a nice summary of what a missing experience is referred to in Hakomi.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sam. It's really, I think of it like what should have happened but didn't get to happen.
Okay.
So a child that experiences, not enough support, for example, we could give an experience of support. Or a child that experiences, not being understood, then we can give an experience of understanding. And sometimes that will be the therapist doing it and speaking kind of in a way to the child part, speaking in a language that's that a child state would understand. It's not always a child. Sometimes the missing experience is just having a cry that you didn't get to have. If it's a grief process, sometimes the missing experience is some kind of unresolved fight-flight response when trauma has happened and it hasn't been able to be mobilized. So in this case, we were getting to a child because that was the memory. But it's anything that, and we can often see what's needed in a client when they first come in. It's the story carries, I'm in a relationship and, I never feel supported and my partner never does anything for me. Well, there you've got, you're looking for support. You're looking for that unconditional love. So we're always kind of on the lookout for that. And I think that's where the real work of Hakomi comes in. If we can provide that missing experience into a mindful state, it's state specific. If that experience happens and in context of the part that didn't get it, it's different to the cognitive, the adult going, oh yeah, I've got lots of people around me that support me. It's a really different experience. So that to me that was really the magic at that time. I thought, well, that's it. You've had this beautiful missing experience with the nurse. You feel like you've understood what's happening. Someone's really been in the safe bubble with you, allowed you to feel your feelings, and seemed like it's all good, right?
Well, we thought we thought that was the end of it.
That's right.
It's just the
That's
beginning.
right. I thought, well, there you go, classic, beautiful Hakomi session. Off we go. Tick, done that. Nice one.
Yeah.
And then I invited you because we had time left. One of the things we like to do in Hakomi, which connects in with neural reorganization, and memory consolidation, is that when we have a new experience, it's really good to hang out in it, to really immerse in it, what we call integration in Hakomi. So since we had time, and that's always a pleasant thing at the end of a session, I just invited you to stay with it, to just really immerse into that experience. And that's when your unconscious started throwing us some very interesting things, right?
Yeah, and the unconscious, because obviously at this point of this immersive experience, it's a 2-year-old in this experience, so it's
That's right.
it throws out things that as an adult doesn't make sense. But I think, because I've done so many Hakomi processes now, and I also lead, I do Hakomi with my clients, so I trust the process. So I just stayed with it, and it started giving me some really interesting images, which made no sense whatsoever.
Absolutely. We had no idea what all this meant. So do you want to share a little bit of how that unfolded for you?
I think it started with the chicken. So there was a chicken.
Yep, that's right.
The chicken was sort of standing there, and it was wanting to peck at something. And it was like, I think the adult version of my brain was going, I have no idea what this is about. So it wants to peck at something. And then out of the blue was a frog. I think there was...
So the chicken came first. And again, I was like, I don't know what this is about either.
Yeah.
So we, again, because you were in mindfulness and you were immersed, I wanted to trust it.
Yeah.
And so I just invited you to hang out with that image and wait and see what came next.
Yeah.
Which was the frog.
Yeah. So then the frog was there. And I was like, okay, now this is getting really a bit weird. But I just sort of continue going with it, because I think the thing is when your subconscious offers something, you don't try to have the adult intervene to interpret. You just hang out with this thing that makes no sense.
And can I just interrupt there, Adele? That is the hardest part about somatic therapy for people who are trying to, adjusting from other therapies, because therapy is always about talking and making sense of and getting insights and using your smart brain to figure out what's going on. Yeah. And in fact, we really want to let that step aside. We'll bring that in later. It's not like we let that go. But we want that to step aside to really, immerse into the process. Yeah. That's right.
So then there was the frog, and the frog wasn't moving. And I think you sort of clocked that the frog wasn't moving. The frog was somehow stuck. And then I said, then there was a spider. And then it was like the spider and then I think I said the word spun too tight.
You said frog and you said pulsating.
Pulsating, like I could feel
the spider spinning too tight.
Yeah, spinning too tight. Like the frog was stuck, but it was throbbing like this.
Yeah.
And then something had spun too tight.
And the frog can't breathe.
Can't breathe.
Yeah.
And it felt like this frog had been spun too tight by the spider, and the chicken was pacing up and down, wanting to peck to save something, but didn't know what to do. So we were in this suspension, basically.
Sam, this must sound pretty weird, huh?
Yeah.
So we just hung out with that, and it was probably a minute or two. It wasn't very long, and these images just clearly coming You didn't dismiss them. We stayed with them. And I think then my next suggestion was to see if you could stay with it and just invited the question more to your unconscious of what's needed here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
yeah. And then it was just, it's too tight, it's stuck.
yeah.
And it was what's needed is the realization that something is too tight and it's stuck.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
You said chicken pecked free, frog can breathe, can't stretch out, stuck for too long. Spider says sorry. Frog is sore, needs time.
Yeah.
So this is how the unconscious speaks to us in these little snippet phrases. It wasn't like long, clear sentences. It was just these little moments of, frog is sore, can't breathe, and just the sense that you were getting from these images.
Yeah.
And then the very interesting one came along. But yes, Sam got.
I was going to say, and also the simplicity that you talk about with the unconscious communication is that you're in a child state of consciousness where language is very simple, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And we want to match that. So as a therapist, it's not to make it too complicated and not to ask questions of what does it mean, but just to hear those little gems from the unconscious that we don't, we had to suspend any sense of meaning or understanding because it really didn't make any sense to either one of us what was going on at that point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then it's very difficult for me to kind of remember because I was so in it.
So then what happened was the bizarrest statement that I've probably ever heard in a session. You said, needs Vicks.
Yes. Vicks, this is Vicks
Vapor Rub. And you said, why? And I just said, let's just hang out with it and see what happens. And you said menthol. Menthol helps you breathe.
Yeah.
Needs heat, not ice.
Yeah.
So that was the session. So the first half about visiting the earlier trauma, which brought the child state, and then the child state, this unconscious, deeply immersed, accessing part of you, brought all these really interesting images that made no sense. So we had the chicken, the frog, the spider, and then the Vicks.
Yeah. And it was really bizarre because I sort of, when you finish a Hakomi session as a client, you kind of stun gunned for a little bit. I was just sort of like, what the hell just happened there? That was really interesting. And it was very interesting to me because I was in this process where my foot was in intensive pain and I was sort of checking with the surgeon, like, is this normal? I don't really understand. And I just did what, my body said that it wanted. It wanted me to put Vicks Vapor Rub on my foot. And I did that. And it was the first time my foot felt relief. It was really, really bizarre. I just trusted. I was like, okay, I have no idea what this is about. It was only ages later, a few days later when I was like, well, why Vicks Vapor Rub? Is there some intelligence behind that? Or was that just nonsense? And it turns out that the menthol and the heat, they actually stimulate repair mechanisms within the body. It actually it works on something called the TRPM8 receptor and creates vasodilation. I was like, who knew? It was just, and
that was incredible.
It was pretty incredible. So, but I think following that, which was really weird, was this process of kind of almost medical gaslighting that I was going through in the subsequent weeks, because I knew something bad had happened in that surgery. And I didn't know what it was. And all of, the surgeon was denying it, and the medical people were like, surely no one's made a mistake or anything. But I fought really hard and I got a nerve conduction study and I got an MRI done on the foot again. To then, the day when I got the results of those, it all happened on one day. I was absolutely blown away because in the MRI, the nerve conduction study said that the medial plantar nerve and lateral plantar nerve were not conducting any there was no nerve conduction in either of those nerves, nothing. In other words, something had happened to the nerves. They were severed or something had happened. And then the MRI, in the MRI, and I downloaded the image of the MRI because I have the software and stuff to look at them. The nerve was tethered, and it had looked like the spider had spun the frog. So the frog was this nerve, and it had spun it too tight. So it actually had tethered. And the radiologist had actually written, the nerve is tethered by something. Something had tethered the nerve. And it was really, really like miraculous to kind of realize that my body, in a very bizarre way, with these like little childlike images, had basically diagnosed something before the medical people had even gotten to it. So that was super weird.
Yeah. And I think you know, what I loved about it too was that you had a sense that something was not right, but you were listening to what you were being told, as you would, by the medical people who know. And I think our session helped give you that extra boost of confidence to really push harder and say, no, this is not right, something is wrong.
Yeah.
And to push for those MRI and the nerve conduction study that actually ended up giving you the diagnosis that needed to be found.
That's right. Yeah. And then everything happened really fast from then onwards, because it was the surgeon, the original surgeon had now referred to another surgeon to take a look at everything. And the results all came out on the Thursday, and it was like by the Monday I was seeing this other surgeon, and she was looking at everything and going, okay, this is actually way more serious than we thought. It's not just the nerve that's tethered. The way the foot is positioned, there's something called a cavus contractor, which is when the whole foot starts to drop and collapse. So she scheduled in an emergency revision surgery, which literally it was going to happen 2 days later. And it needed 2 surgeons because apparently it was quite complex, and they couldn't really, it was an exploratory surgery because they didn't actually know what had tethered the nerve or what was actually going on. And it was the night before the surgery, I asked you, and you very kindly had another session with me, because I thought to myself, based on the incredible wisdom of the previous session, surely my body has something to say about this surgery that is now up and coming. So there was almost like a part 1 and then a part 2 of this therapy. So yeah, we went back in, and I was nervous before this surgery. I was, obviously not very trusting of the surgeons, because obviously I didn't feel like something had gone right here. And they still hadn't known what had happened, obviously until the surgery had taken place. So we then had this second session.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you emailed me to ask for a session, you said, I remember your email said, living live trauma right now. So you were really, and I hadn't seen you in that kind of state, and quite understandably, you were really frightened and really in a lot of pain. And, the fear was that I think they were telling you that you weren't ever going to run again. The surgery was to save your foot and enable you to walk, walk, if that.
Yeah.
Which is terrifying.
I was pretty devastated. I mean, I'd had the neurologist and 2 surgeons basically say to me, I'm really sorry, I don't know what's happened, but the way your foot's positioned, I don't know. Let's hope you can walk again. And I just thought, my God, that's quite a horrible thing to hear. So I was really in a desperate place.
So, hearing that, and you were going into the surgery, again, I came from the point of view of, I don't know that there's anything I can do for you physically. And we'll get to talk a bit more about that next time, right? But I thought, well, at least if I can help you regulate your nervous system and go into the surgery a little calmer, then surely that's going to be helpful at some level, right? That you're not so distressed going in. So that was really all my grand intentions were just to help you be a little calmer. And but your unconscious gave us some more interesting wisdom, right?
Yeah, and it was funny because we were it was faster this time in a way to kind of get back to that same space. And I can't. It's so weird when I try and talk about it, because I struggle to remember, because I was so in it when I was in it. But I think the frog this time was it was on train tracks.
Well, I did have notes, so that's helpful. So we know that we have got a good recollection of what actually happened here.
I'm really glad.
So so we just let's go to the body, let's listen to the wisdom, let's see what comes up. And so I think it started with the frog. You said that I can see the frog, it's lying there tight, telling me help is coming. It won't be much longer. So I invited you to really tell the frog that, to take the mindfulness and go in and really give that message to the frog, because it seemed like some part of you knew that help is coming, but the fear in your system, the activation, was suggesting that that wasn't really embodied for you. So we wanted to really get that deep into your body, that help is coming. So we did that. We said that to the frog. We're listening. Help is coming. There are two good surgeons. I invited, mentioned those things. There are two good surgeons coming for you. They're going to figure this out, and invited you to let your foot feel this. So we did that, and then the chicken popped up, and the chicken said, "I've been waiting for you to tell me when I can peck." So we didn't really know what to make of that. But you were, the key thing for me, you were really immersed. You were right in it. You were in mindfulness. And then you said, there's something kind of over here. And then the spider came in, and the spider said, sorry.
Yeah.
Which didn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
And the spider then said, you said to me, he says, you can use my body to fill the hole. You can stitch me into the hole. My body is the perfect shape for the hole.
Yeah.
Which at the time made no sense at all as well.
And I could see it spinning itself into a cocoon.
Right.
So
you had
really
the image,
bizarre.
and these were these words coming from the spider, and you said he wants to sacrifice himself.
Yeah.
And I think your brain came and said, I'm not sure if that's a good idea. That doesn't seem like a good plan. So again, I just invited you to suspend any judgment and let's just see what comes.
Yeah.
And you said the frog is lying there with stitches across. And then you brought that analogy. You said it's like those old-fashioned movies, right, of when the woman is lying across the railway track and the train is coming and she's still tied, and, the old black and whites, and you've got to hurry to get her out.
Yeah.
So that kind of feeling of the frog lying there with stitches.
Yeah.
So I suggested that we want to give the frog the message to relax and be calm, so that it doesn't fight against the stitches. So again, that analogy, I went with your analogy. If the woman is lying there on the railway tracks and someone comes to help and take off the ropes, you don't want the woman fighting. You don't want her trying to get out. So it seemed to me that, again, that analogy, that metaphor that your body brought helped me to then know how to intervene, that actually if the frog is calm, if the woman is calm, the surgeons will be able to do their job better. And again, we'll make more sense of that when we talk about some of the science behind it. But, we could do that. We gave the message to the frog, like, by this time tomorrow, you'll be stretched out again. Don't wrestle against the rope. We can stop the train, So you said, it's okay. We can stop the train. So we gave the frog all those messages, which helped the frog to calm down. And you were still a bit worried about the spider. You said, I don't want the spider to worry. I'm not sure that's a good idea. But the spider said, he's not frightened. He's going to spin a cocoon and go to sleep. So we decided to just listen to that. So that was really the first part of that session, which gonna give us, I think that was really, really empowering for you to start to feel
safe.
Some safety. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a bit about?
And then I could feel my whole body just started to relax, because then we moved to the next part where there was a water, and there was a whirlpool. and there was a paper boat going round and round on this whirlpool. But then we found a plug, and the plug stopped the whirlpool, and then it was calm. The surface was calm. So it's almost like something then calmed.
Yeah.
And then there was a beach ball and a seagull.
Yes.
Like a sound of seagull, like we're on the beach now, and there's a beach ball. And then it ended with the words foot friend. And I think none of us understood. You couldn't hear me, and I had to repeat it. And I kept saying foot friend.
So yes, that's exactly right. And so after the second set of images with the whirlpool and the ball, we were like the plug, and it was getting a bit like, whoa, what's going on here? That doesn't really make sense. But anyway, we'll just let the images be there. And then I think I said to you to check back in with your body, because you said this makes no sense. It's to check in with your body, and you said it feels calm, it's waiting. So we knew that something was helping, that you were feeling calm. And I said, I'm going to ask a question to your body, and let's see how it responds. And I said, is there anything your body wants us to know, anything for tomorrow, anything to heal? And that's when you said, there's a plan. You'll see. Don't rush. Foot friend. And you said, I don't know what that means. But we just stayed with those words, and you just said, no, that's it. I just hear foot friend. And then it changed to foot friends. So we just stayed with that sense of those words, right?
Yeah. And I think that's kind of where the session then started to draw to a close. And again, I had that sort of fuzzy feeling kind of coming out. But later that evening, I was just so overwhelmed by calm. You know, everybody was phoning me before the surgery because everybody was freaked out by what had now transpired, and my whole family was, and I was just so calm. I was so relaxed. My whole body just felt relaxed. And that's when I realized the foot friends are the surgeons. I hadn't actually put two and two together, that they are the friends of the foot.
The foot.
And that the train was somehow the surgery that was coming, and we could just slow things down and relax. The frog needed to relax, and the foot friends were somehow with the chicken. They were going to unpick this spider web thing, and we were going to be on the beach, and it was going to be fine. Everything's going to be great. And it was really weird because that morning that I went to the hospital, the minute the two surgeons walked in, they were like, you're the most relaxed patient we've ever seen. Because I was just like, I just saw them, and my whole body said foot friends. It was like, these are the friends. And I was so relaxed. And the anesthetist said, gosh, you're so relaxed. And he said, goes, given the trauma you've just been through, and this like, I think it's a botched surgery you had. And I said, well, I don't really know. But it only all started to kind of come to light and make sense about 3 or 4 days later, because that's when the results of the surgeon, the second surgeons said to me that the first surgeon had accidentally stitched the nerve. Wow. That was what that tethering was on the MRI. And there were some other errors where the foot had then dropped because he'd accidentally overstitched the fascia as well. So the fascia was also all constricted, and that they'd kind of just undid a lot of that stuff. And I had this call with my parents, and I said to them, guys, I'm just going to say something really weird, but do these things make any sense to you? And I didn't tell them about the Hakomi session. I just said, like when I was young and I was a little girl in hospital and I was having that big surgery, does a frog and a chicken make any sense? And my mum goes, oh yes, you had a Fisher-Price toy set that you always played with. And my dad said, yeah, and your favorite was the chicken and the frog.
Wow.
And I said, and what about a spider? And they said, oh, your favorite nursery rhyme to sing to everybody was Incy Wincy Spider.
And so by you embodying that experience before going into surgery, you went in a fearless state because you embodied the experience in 2 sessions with Karen. And so it's just a wonderful example of how therapy may not, like psychotherapy, clinical psychology, may not help the physical, but it can help the memories that are stored in the body from previous experience, and then that missing experience that we talked about as well.
Yeah.
But to me, the intelligence, that something I don't even remember as a little girl, that the body somehow remembered that. And I know Bezel van der Kolk, talks a lot about the body keeps the score, the body remembers everything. But to have that experience so viscerally for myself, where I literally thought I've lost the plot. I'm thinking about chickens and spiders and frogs and trains and like, what's wrong with me? But actually, all of it started to make sense when I go back with my parents and I was talking about like what happened. What was the first thing we did when we came out of surgery? We went to the beach. And I was little.
Wow.
Because we were in Cape Town and we went to the beach.
Yeah.
And so it was just like my
And
body
that's when
remembers.
it was okay. That's when it was okay.
That's when I was safe. And that's when it was all like kind of connected. And it's just like those little things.
So the beach ball and the seagulls was your body's way of saying you're going to be okay.
Yeah. It's just crazy. It's kind of like a really strange story, but yet what we've discovered in our sort of research is how much science is behind a really wacky experience like this, and how much science is behind somatic therapies now.
Well, Adele, I think you also need to tell people what the outcome of that surgery was, because you went into that thinking that you might be lucky enough to walk again, but not run.
So, I mean, this is sort of, it's 2 weeks ago that I had the surgery, and I walked the next day very tentatively on crutches, just in the cast. And then the surgeon said to me, you need to walk as much as possible. So I would walk on this cast. I walked so much, the cast actually disintegrated, and I had to have it like removed and then put into a moon boot and continued walking in the moon boot. And I'm now transitioning to shoes. And I saw one of the surgeons 2 days ago, and she was blown away. She said, I've never seen someone bounce back this quickly. And I said, I will play squash again. And she's like, I bet you will. And she said, just follow this process and go see the physio. And I said, I've got appointments with physio, podiatrists, all the people. So I'm just following that plan, but I can really see that it's the power of the mind and the connection of the mind and the body is it's a wisdom that is beyond like just the pure cognitive. It's very deep. Yeah, it's very intangible.
And Adele, do you think that, what we did in that second session to calm your system, you went in calm, which was obviously a much better state to go into the surgery in, but do you think the calmness in any way contributed to the actual physical success of the surgery?
100%. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine so, but I'm curious about.
Yeah, in fact, the surgeon said to me, it was strange that when they cut, because they had to cut exactly the same place they'd cut before, and she said it just parted like a sea, like Moses in this. She said it just parted, and she said it's like the blood just pulled back. So it was like so the surgery was scheduled for 90 minutes. She said they were done and dusted within 40. She said it was so simple, and she said when she stitched the nerve, it just came back to life just like that again. And the stitching, she said the stitching on the outside, it was so simple. So she was like, it's so, for what we were two surgeons, this was going to be an emergency. And it was just like, then to see it go so smoothly and my recovery, the improvements and the kind of, to see that happen so smoothly. And I can feel in my foot, in my body, of course, there's a ways to go, but I can feel I will run again. I will play squash again. Like I will get back to full function again. Like it's just without fear.
Yeah. And it seems to me that, the metaphors that your unconscious gave us of the frog tied up and the woman on the tracks and the intervention to calm the frog, and seemed like that, your foot really took that in. Not
Yes.
just your mind took it in. You weren't just the calm, relaxed patient, but your foot was calm, and the
Yes.
tissues in your foot would have been, like a frog, relaxed. And I kind of had this image of, it would have made it so much easier for the surgeons to cut that stitch and to release things, because the foot itself
wasn't
was
tense.
softer and not fighting again. So all those beautiful images of the woman on the railway tracks, and being able to really give that message, not just to your mind, but to your body, to your foot, to actually be calm, facilitated a more successful surgery, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
And this is never underestimate the intelligence of the body, the innate intelligence of the body. Like, it's always wanting to move in the direction of, being better, isn't it? And so when
Health and healing,
you were just
yeah.
kind of let go, like it was just ready to do the right thing, wasn't it? Just needed the right circumstances to do so. And I think when we discuss that at our next time together on that cell danger response, that is an intelligence of the body trying to protect you in some way. So
I'm looking forward. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
There's one little connection that I made that I think is really helpful in terms of understanding the power of therapy, is that I didn't know this, you probably did, but you came to me with the surgery being, I don't know if I'll walk again. I'm scared I won't walk. And part of that process, you let me know that your parents were scared that you would never walk, and that's the reason that you were in that surgery and in that awful position as a 2-year-old for 6 months, in order to enable you to walk. And I think you even said that you were so scared to tell your parents that you might not walk again because of everything that they'd gone through and you'd gone through in order to get you to be able to walk. How terrible if you couldn't walk now. But the connection I made was, there's the link, right? This foot, it wasn't your foot that was surgery before when you were a baby, right? It was your hips. But the link was, I might not walk, or can I walk? And so the fear around being told that I might not walk again helped to access that, again, that network of memories and the early surgery, the emotions around the early surgery. And I wasn't aware of that connection. So I love that. Again, it's like we have to have something show up in our life now. And if we really trust it to go deeper, we can then heal something from the past. So I think not only have you had a successful surgery and saved your foot as an adult, you've actually healed the 2-year-old in you from that early trauma.
Yeah, I have such a different feeling about that surgery as a young person.
Now.
The connection to that younger version of me, the play, the childlike kind of elements of it, and it's just and the connection to my parents is also deepened, because it's a time of their life that they've never discussed with me. And my mother said to me, when we sort of debriefed all this, and we were all just crying talking about this, like, just wow, the Fisher-Price toy set, who knew? And the beach, and how these images have come out in your late 40s, and it just, how does this all connect now? And my mum saying to me, it was so horrific as a mother to put your child into a situation where you're trying to save their walking, but knowing you're also giving them childhood trauma because the hospital won't allow you to visit. And I didn't realize that years after that, she was such a big campaigner for parents to be able to be with their children day and night if they're in hospitals or surgical environments and that kind of thing. So, obviously hospitals have changed their policies now. They don't do that anymore. You don't have visiting hours if you've got young kids. So anyway, yeah. Good. So,
wow.
Thanks for sharing. A lot of vulnerability in that story as well. So really interesting. And I look forward to continuing the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So we will circle back in the next episode on part 2 of the kind of the science behind all of this, talking about psychoneuroimmunology and metabolomics and cell danger response. So we can kind of take the therapeutic process and break it down into the science. So, yeah, fantastic. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye.
The information shared on the Naked Insights podcast is for educational and information purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional therapy or counseling. While we aim to provide helpful and accurate insights, individual experiences may vary. If you're experiencing trauma, mental health issues, or distress, please seek guidance from a qualified professional. The views expressed by us as the hosts are our own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions or positions of any affiliated organizations.